It is the year 1987, moving into 1988, and life has entered a very different phase for Freddie Mercury. Not long before this, he had stood on the stage with Queen during the Magic Tour, performing in front of massive crowds across Europe. Those shows would later become the last time he ever toured with a band. Since then, something had shifted. The world still knew him as the voice of the Queen, the man who could command an entire stadium, but behind that image his life had grown quieter. He was no longer touring, he spent more time at home, and privately, something had changed that very few people knew. Freddie had been diagnosed with HIV. It was not something he spoke about publicly. To the outside world nothing had changed, but inside his home at Garden Lodge, life had begun to move at a different pace. The house itself felt calm, almost protected from everything outside. It was filled with personal things, soft lighting, and a sense of comfort that did not exist anywhere else. And moving freely through every room were the cats that Freddie loved so deeply. There were many of them now. They climbed onto furniture, stretched out across tables, and followed Freddie wherever he went. They did not care about fame or illness or anything beyond that moment. And in that way, they brought a kind of peace into the house. One afternoon, Freddie sat in the living room as one of the cats slowly made its way onto his lap. Jim watched from nearby. "They have completely taken over," he said. Freddie looked down at the cat, gently resting his hand on its back. "They always had," he replied. Jim smiled slightly. "And you let them?" Freddie glanced up. "Of course," he said. "They don't ask for anything complicated." It was a simple remark, but it carried meaning. Life had become about simplicity. Freddie no longer needed the constant movement of tours, the pressure from performing, or the attention of the outside world. What mattered now was much closer, much quieter. But even in this calm environment, the reality of his illness was beginning to show itself. At first, it was easy to ignore. There were days when he seemed almost the same as before, moving through the house, talking, laughing, making small jokes about everything. On those days, it felt as if nothing had changed at all. "You see," Freddie said once, turning slightly towards Jim, "I'm perfectly fine." Jim gave a small nod. "I know," he said. But those days did not last. More often now, there were signs. Freddie moved more slowly. He would pause in the middle of doing something, as if he needed a moment to gather his strength. Simple tasks took longer than before. In the mornings, it sometimes took time to get going. One day, Jim found him standing quietly in the kitchen, waiting for the kettle. "Did you sleep?" Jim asked. Freddie gave a slight shrug. "Not much," he said. He looked down at the counter, then added, "It comes and goes." Jim didn't push further, but he could see the change clearly now. The illness was no longer something distant. It was part of everyday life. There were more doctor visits. Freddie never spoke about them in detail, but there was a difference in him when he returned. Sometimes he was quiet, thoughtful, as if he was carrying something he didn't want to put into words. One afternoon, after coming back from an appointment, he walked slowly into the house and sat down without saying anything. One of the cats jumped up beside him almost immediately. Jim stood nearby. "How was it?" he asked. Freddie stroked the cat for a moment before answering. "It is what it is," he said. There was a pause. "We'll manage." And Jim nodded. That was how things were handled. Not with long discussions, not with dramatic moments, but with quiet understanding. As the months passed, Freddie began to spend more time resting. At first, it was just short breaks. He would lie down for a while in the afternoon, saying he needed to recharge. but gradually those periods became longer. Some days he would stay in his room for hours. The hours adjusted around him. Everything became calmer, slower. There was no rush, no pressure to follow any kind of schedule. The day moved according to how Freddie felt. He still found comfort in the same things. The cats remained close to him at all times, often gathering around him when he sat or lay down. He spoke to them constantly, his voice soft, almost soothing. "You're the only ones who behave properly," he said one day. Jim laughed. "That's not what I've seen." Freddie looked over at him. "They understand me better," he replied. Even now, his humor was still there. It came in small moments, in quiet remarks, in the way he spoke about ordinary things. But there was also something else beneath it, a growing awareness that things were changing. Freddie began to go out less. The world beyond Garden Lodge seemed less important. The noise, the attention, the expectations, none of it mattered in the same way anymore. Inside the house he felt he could be himself. He could rest when he needed to. He could move at his own pace. He could simply exist without explanation. There were still good moments. Sometimes he would suddenly sing a few lines of a song while walking through the house, his voice still strong, still unmistakable. Other times he would sit with Jim and talk, remembering things, making small observations, finding humor where he could. "You're doing that wrong," he said once, watching Jim in the kitchen. "I'm doing my best," Jim replied. Freddie smiled slightly. "That's the problem," he said. They both laughed. For a moment everything felt normal again. But the illness was always there. It showed itself in small ways. Tiredness, slower movement, the need for rest, the quiet days that came more often. At night, when the house became still, those thoughts felt closer. One evening, as they sat together in the dim light, Freddie spoke quietly. "It's strange," he said. Jim looked at him. "What is?" Freddie took a moment before answering. "How everything feels the same and not the same at all." Jim nodded slowly. Freddie looked down. His voice softened now. "I don't think about it all the time," he said. "But when I do, it's there." Jim didn't try to change the subject. He didn't try to find the right words. Instead, he simply stayed where he was. "I'm here," he said. Freddie looked at him for a moment. "I know," he replied. And that was enough. This period of life is not marked by big events or sudden changes. It is shaped by something quieter, a shift in how time is experienced, a growing awareness of what matters most. Freddie did not let the illness take everything from him. He held on to the things that gave him comfort, his home, his cats, his routines, and the people he trusted. He created a life that was smaller in scale but deeper in meaning. For Jim, every day became more important. The small moments mattered more than ever before. The conversations, the laughter, the quiet evenings. Because beneath it all, there was an understanding that did not need to be spoken directly. Things were changing, and this time they would not go back to how they were before.